Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Breakfast with Disaster. Uh, Special day for us here. We've officially reached our 100th episode, which is pretty exciting. I know Dan ran probably the first 55 episodes or so, and then I kind of started filling in towards the second half. Um, but yeah, 100th episode just starting off today. So thank you guys for joining us. On today's episode, I'm gonna just kind of go over some things on bloodborne pathogens, how to protect yourself in an environment where I'm not gonna get too involved as far as like cleanup, waste disposal, all that kind of stuff, as far as like a biohazard situation, but more so, I want to focus this on things that normally you could normally come across, whether it's like you were entering somebody's apartment or something to like, let's say you're working in an apartment complex and you were getting ready to clear out their place. Just some things you'd want to watch out for that the average person could come across in their daily lives. So I'm going to kind of just jump right into it right now. Uh, so a lot of us are probably don't know what bloodborne pathogens are. So um, we're kind of just jump right into it right here. I hope everybody can read this too as well. I tried to make this font a little bit bigger. But yeah, obviously, it's a fancier word for basically a way of diseases spreading. So microorganisms that can be carried in blood that cause disease in humans. So pretty self-explanatory as far as definition goes. But we're going to jump into types of situations that you would want to be a little cautious when you would enter these types of situations. Um, and then we'll get back into here into PPE here in a second as well. But here are some of the common bloodborne pathogen diseases. As you can see, a lot of these are probably no surprise, especially like syphilis, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. I'm going to use some of these examples here in a moment to kind of give you a further understanding too here. Moving forward. So this is actually very interesting. And in fact, a lot of our employees here do the hepatitis B vaccination too, which is not a bad idea considering if you are in a job where you are going to be handling blood and other bodily fluids, it wouldn't be a bad option. Um, it's offered to potentially exposed employees if they have not already received the vaccine, and it's at no cost to the employee as well, which is always a nice thing too. This should occur as soon as possible, preferably within 24 hours of exposure. um, I don't know why that slide is in there because I would think after you wouldn't want to get a vaccine after you've already been potentially infected. So that doesn't really add up there. um, but anyways, according to healthcare professionals, those who have already received the vaccine should be protected for potentially 20 years. So not a bad thing, one time can last you about 20 years. So what? If you're working for 40 years, you only probably have to have it done twice. So just something to kind of keep in mind with that too. Um, some other things too is hepatitis C. Now, hepatitis C is the most common chronic bloodborne pathogen infection in the United States. Symptoms can include jaundice, fatigue, abdominal pain, loss of appetite, intermittent nausea, and vomiting. In a more chronic situation, it can lead to like liver disease and also, fortunately, ultimately could lead towards death if not properly diagnosed. And these are just some methods. And I'm sorry if I'm kind of jumping around here. I want to make sure I kind of cover everything. But for the potentially infectious, like bodily fluids, these are some of the most common. Obviously, blood, saliva, vomit, urine, semen, and vaginal secretions. Sorry if anybody's eating breakfast right now. I apologize. Skin tissues, skin cultures, and basically any other like bodily fluid. Some more um, potentially hazardous than others. And I'll get to that here in just a second as well. This was yeah, I did want to cover this too as well, actually, with hepatitis B because it is probably second to hepatitis C. One in 1.25 million Americans are chronically infected. So it is a very common thing. Symptoms are very similar to hepatitis C as well. Um, Vaccinations have been available since the early 80s. And I thought this was kind of interesting that it can actually survive for at least 1 week in dried blood. So if you were in a situation where you were, let's say, cleaning out a tenant's apartment and they had moved out 3 days ago, there is still a good chance that you would want to be wearing the proper PPE while you're in there. So you can definitely not be exposed to something like that. So, um, and that brings me to my next thing here, what I wanted to discuss, which is what to kind of watch out for. Now, this is something that I thought was kind of interesting because it's something you don't really think about when you enter a room. You're just maybe focused on one particular thing. You kind of just rush in there, not realizing that there's potentially a nail that's sticking up out of the floor, or not even out of the floor, it could be sticking up out of the wall. Like there could be where a picture used to hang. Somebody could have, if they bled on the carpet, it could have bled underneath and got onto the tack strips. So when you're removing carpets, that's another thing you want to keep in mind. Always want to wear gloves. In fact, you could even double up on the gloves. Um, but like I said, a tack strip's going to go right through latex gloves. So you want to take every precaution you possibly could. Slow down, observe the situation before you kind of rush into it. If somebody was a drug user, there's a good chance you could find dirty needles hiding in like a pile of clothes that maybe they left behind, or could be potentially in like the crevice of a couch. If you're throwing out some of the old furniture, what you could do is, um, if instead of sticking your hands into the inside of the couch, you could just try to maybe stick your hands to the outside, maybe try to avoid crevices, things like that, because that could cause an issue. Um, not, approach cautiously. So, um, and there's another one I thought that was interesting. Actually, Don brought this one up. Diabetic test strips can still have traces of blood on them. So if someone is a diabetic and they left one of their test strips laying around, they could also, if it was on there for a week, you could still have the potential of being exposed to these pathogens. So went over that already. Oh yeah. So, and most importantly, kind of the conclusion for everything too, you know, is PPE. I can't stress it enough. You want to make sure that you're understanding the situation that you're going into and that you're properly equipped. You don't want to go into a situation where you do not have enough supplies to effectively protect yourself. And some of those PPE requirements would be as follows. So, latex, vinyl, or nitrate gloves. The nitrate gloves work very well. I actually use those when I'm making epoxy resin. They're very, very tough too. They hold up pretty well, almost better than latex, I feel. Obviously, goggles, um, CPR, mouth barriers, aprons, full protective suits, respirators, and obviously having backup cartridges for those respirators if you're going to be on that site for more than a few days. Waterproof boots are another great thing too, preferably even a steel toe and a nice thick base on the boot, just so you can potentially avoid some of those hidden sharps that we discussed. So. But yeah, just thought I'd put together a little something different for you guys instead of always talking about fire and water. Hopefully, you guys got something out of this one this morning. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into our wheel of names. Let's see who our winner is this morning. All right, 687. I mean, it's the worst time for Google to ask you for a password, right? Right. All right. Leslie Kwitowski, agency. In fact, I think Don was over there just recently. So, Leslie, congratulations. If you're watching, I will drop off a double prize for you. And if you're not watching, I'll still bring you something nice in person. Thank you everybody for watching this morning. Glad you could be here for a 100th episode, and I hope you have a good rest of your week. And we will see you guys here next week at 10:10. All right, we'll talk to you then.